Welcome to View from the Top. I'm Modele Sharafa Yusuf, and I'm glad that you could join us. The Ministry of Aviation regulates air travel and aviation services in Nigeria. As you know, it's responsible for formulation and implementation of government's aviation policies and for overseeing air transportation, airport development, maintenance and provision of aviation infrastructural services, among others. Because of the critical nature of its brief, the Aviation Ministry is very closely watched by the Nigerian people, and it is now being headed by someone who is also used to being in the spotlight, former Corps Marshal Osita Chidoka. Mr. Chidoka joins me today in his first exclusive interview since becoming Aviation Minister, and I thank him very much. Thank you, Mr. Chidoka.
Thank you very much.
Before we get down to business, here's a brief profile. Osita Chidoka was born on July 18, 1971. He holds a bachelor's degree in management from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and a graduate diploma in maritime and ports management from National University of Singapore. He also obtained a certificate in global strategy and political economy from the Mansfield College, Oxford University, and a master's degree in transport policy and logistics from the George Mason's University, USA. Before he was appointed to head FRSC, he had worked at the Federal Capital Development Authority, served as a personal assistant to the Minister of State, Ministry of Works and Housing, personal assistant to the Minister of Transport, special assistant to the Senior Special Advisor to the President on Legal Matters, and Senior Advisor, Government and Business Relations, Mobil Producing Nigeria, a subsidiary of ExxonMobil Corporation. He was appointed Corps Marshal of the Federal Road Safety Commission in 2007 and Minister of Aviation in July this year. Honorable Minister, only recently, the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration reissued Nigeria its Category 1 status. And at that ceremony, you promised to reform and strengthen the Accident Investigation Bureau in line with the National Transportation Safety Board for greater efficiency and service delivery. What have you found to be the exact problem in the AIB?
In terms of the FAA Category 1, let me speak about that. It's a certification that Nigeria Airports has met some minimum standards set by the Federal Aviation Authority of the U.S., and we're very proud of that. We're happy. But for me, it is not a destination. It's a journey. So we don't think that we have FAA certification because it's a snapshot in time. It's an audit conducted over a period of time. So what has happened after the audit or what will happen the years down the line is not known to anybody. So part of it is that we have to strengthen our ability to monitor our incidents. And the AIB is an accident investigation bureau. And ideally, they wait for accidents to happen for them to investigate. But I also think that they should also look at incidents, things that could lead to accidents, having some proactive ability to stop accidents. So there is really no problem with the AIB. It's just that I want to create greater independence for the AIB. We can't investigate ourselves. I want to create greater autonomy for them and empower them to be able to work with airlines and with the other regulators in the industry to ensure a safe system.
You vowed to channel the resources of the ministry to boost safety and security of Nigerian airports. In what areas exactly will you be concentrating?
Well, safety and security of the airports is it's not too omnibus. The safety of our airspace is an important ingredient of civil aviation. Safety is number one, number two, and number three. So for us in Nigeria, making sure that we have enough manpower to certify aircraft, certify pilots, making sure we have the right manpower to regulate the industry strongly, and to make sure that training standards and certification of institutions are done in accordance with the rules will be somewhere we'll be investing our resources in. Also, in terms of security, making sure that our physical infrastructure, the physical airport, is secured, that our access to the airport and the passengers flow in the airports are done in a secured manner is of also paramount interest to us. So those are the areas that will be diverting our attentions, or rather drawing our attention as we go forward.
As you rightly mentioned, personnel is key here. But how can you talk about safety when security operatives at the airports, for example, can apparently be easily compromised? Almost everyone I know has complained about the fact that many of these people ask for tips when screening bags, for example. I mean, what kind of security operative says, Madam, what did you bring for us?
That's a dicey, a tricky one. But let me say this. Low-level corruption, as we call it, those corruptions where people collect some money from people for services rendered and sometimes for services not rendered, is a phenomenon that afflicts many countries and many institutions. It's not peculiar to aviation or anything.
It's only in Nigeria that I see security operatives at airports ask for tips. I mean, we all know that there is low-level corruption in Nigeria, but the work is so key. How can people like that ask for tips? Because what it means is I can just give whatever amount and go through the screening point with anything.
Yeah, the question is to find out whether by that giving him the money, you're allowed to go through that screening. That's what I would like to see Nigerians test. Not just begging for money, because there's a difference between begging for money, which is a national malaise and a national disgrace, when they actually, Oga, we agree to you, Oga, we are doing this.
But if
distance
the money is good
extorting
enough,
money from you.
But if the money is good enough, you know you can get away with anything.
That's what I want to say, that it's important we figure that out and see how vulnerable we are in terms of money. And we're doing a study now to find out how vulnerable are we really in the airports. And this is being done by a third-party group, and they're not, we're not showing who they are. So at the end of their study, we will see what have they been able to penetrate the system with. Just using money, and that I can give you a better answer on this.
Let's still continue talking about the airport. It seems to be taking forever, but the Murtala Mohammed Airport in Lagos, for example, which is the gateway to Nigeria, is gradually being updated. However, there's something about that airport that is, chaotic, and whether you are departing or arriving, I know it is more of a human element. Because it's one thing to give the airport a facelift, it's another for travelers to have a good experience. What are you going to do about that very important airport? What are you instructing be done?
Well, a whole lot of measures are coming in to change the dynamics in the airport. So we're getting the airport managers to become responsible for their airports, and we're getting them to take ownership of the airport in terms of creating performance targets, creating an outcome-based evaluation system, that an airport manager knows that his responsibility just goes beyond making the services to work, but making sure the airport is a conducive atmosphere. So we have done a lot with them, and we're working with them to produce the criteria, to produce the performance indicators, so that we can begin to monitor. But one of the critical things we want to use is what I call citizen-led advocacy, that the citizens are going to speak up. So we are trying to put together a phone number that will allow people to call us in and report breaches, report delays, report anything. So we keep track of them and make sure that we resolve that. So in the absence of proper regulation, proper ownership of the airport, then the airport is open for everybody. Anybody just walks in, the chaos we talk about happens because nobody has taken personal responsibility for keeping the airports in good shape.
The airlines, the homegrown airlines, have been asking for a bigger slice of the international pie. They complain about the exploitation of the bilateral air services agreement by ministry officials to, in their words, benefit foreign airlines. What are you going to be doing about this to make our homegrown airlines happier?
Well, I don't know what to really make them happy, but I know it's a free market, and I know there is competition. I also ideologically agree that local, entrepreneurs, local business people should be given some advantage in their local market, and we're willing to do that. The nature of that advantage, I do not want to discuss at this time, but we're thinking that they should get some advantage on the grounds that they also make some commitments.
What kind of commitments would you be looking at?
Timing of taking off of their plane, being able to explain to their passengers, being able to quarter their passengers when they cause these delays. So we need to have them to commit to something before we can look at their own requests.
Obviously, more people fly the domestic routes, and it is domestic operations that attract the most comments, like those that you made. Flights are still being delayed or cancelled arbitrarily, and the age of aircrafts flying these routes have also been a cause for concern. What is being done to ensure greater sanity in these areas?
One of the things is that we're reviewing the amount required to own an airline. We're reviewing, so we're trying to make sure that we have big players. Because what is happening is that when you have small fragmented players, they can't really play in the market. The foreign airlines will overwhelm them. So we're looking forward to seeing, minimum of 5 aircraft airlines, so that when they take off, they start with some spare capacity, with some muscle to weather the storm of the initial problems, challenges of businesses, and also the delay in ramping up. So I believe that the local airlines have an ally in me, because I ideologically agree with the local content, improving local capacity. And we'll do our very best to make sure that they are in the loop.
Still talking about the local airlines versus the foreign airlines, I know some time ago the National Assembly was trying to probe why Nigerians were paying more on foreign airlines than happened in other African countries like Ghana, for example. Is there some way that the ministry can protect the flying public from this kind of apparent exploitation?
Well,